My name is Ethan Caldwell. I am 38 years old, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, and a cybersecurity strategist known in defense circles worldwide. But as I stand before the mirror in my quiet hotel suite tonight, wearing a simple black suit instead of my uniform, I see only a man trying to remember what it feels like to belong to a family. I've spent years leading cyber operations, founding units like Ghost Grid, earning top honors from West Point, Johns Hopkins, and MIT. Yet none of it seems to matter now. Today, I'm not an officer. I'm just Ethan, the eldest son, returning home for my brother Aiden's wedding, wondering if anyone will see who I've truly become. The morning of Aiden's wedding dawns quiet and cold. I wake before the sun rises, staring at the ceiling of my suite, feeling the silence press against my chest, like an invisible weight. I've been in combat zones where alarms blared at 3 a.m., where men screamed orders into the frozen night. But this silence, this is heavier. I sit up, rub my hands over my face, feeling the roughness of my unshaved jaw. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell, cybersecurity strategist, founder of Ghost Grid, the man who's led teams to stop attacks that could have crippled nations. But none of that matters here. Here I'm just Ethan, the son who never belonged. I stand and walk to the window, parting the heavy hotel curtains. Below, the city stirs to life under the pink wash of dawn. Cars sweep through wide streets lined with glass towers. Everything looks clean, polished, controlled, unlike the chaos of my real life. I touch the window with my fingertips, feeling its chill seep into my skin. Somewhere out there is Nixora Dynamics, my family's empire. Somewhere in one of those towers, my father, Charles Caldwell, sips his black coffee reading market reports, deciding which company to buy or destroy today. My mother, Olivia, probably sits by the window reading poetry with quiet grace. And Aiden, he's probably already in hair and makeup practicing his charming smile for the cameras. A sudden tightness clamps around my ribs. I remember when Aiden was just a boy in pajamas chasing me around the garden, begging me to teach him how to throw a baseball. He could never throw straight. I always had to catch it for him. I shower dress in my black suit and pin the West Point ring onto my finger. Its cold metal grounds me, reminds me who I am or who I thought I was supposed to be. I check the time. Almost 9 a.m. Guests will be arriving soon at Grand Elysium. I take a deep breath, grab my invitation, and leave the room. The hotel lobby glows under golden chandeliers, staff bustling to and fro with polished smiles. As I step outside, a valet opens the door of my car. "Good morning, sir," he says. His eyes flick to the insignia pin on my lapel. Respect flickers there. For a fleeting second, I feel seen. But as the car winds through city streets toward the wedding, my chest tightens again. The last time I saw my family was at my grandmother's funeral. That was 10 years ago. I wore my uniform then too. My father barely looked at me. My mother cried softly into her silk handkerchief. Aiden was on his phone even during the burial, dealing with investors from Hong Kong. I arrive at Grand Elysium. The entrance is lined with red carpet, white marble columns towering like silent guards. Crystal chandeliers hang from arched ceilings. Soft jazz flows out from inside, mingling with laughter and the scent of expensive perfume. I pause at the door, adjusting my tie. I'm not nervous, the military beat that out of me years ago. But there is a heaviness inside me that even battlefield fear cannot match. I walk in, hand my invitation to a young woman in a staff uniform. She checks it, bows politely, and gestures. "Table 17, sir," she says softly. Table 17, the words stab deep. Not the head table, not even close to the family's circle. Just a table in the far corner reserved for people who don't matter. I smile and thank her. but inside something twists cold and sharp. I walk past rows of round tables adorned with gold-rimmed dinnerware and towering floral centerpieces. Guests chatter about mergers, stock splits, luxury property in Geneva. I walk unnoticed, a silent shadow with polished shoes. When I reach table 17, I pull out a chair and sit. The people here barely glance at me before returning to their conversation about IPO yields. I look down at my hands, tracing the ridges of my West Point ring. I hear someone whisper behind me. That's Ethan Caldwell, the eldest son. The one in the military, another voice replies, tinged with pity. What a waste. With his mind, he could have ruled Nixora. I don't turn around. I've heard it all before. Soldier, fool, disappointment. I scan the hall. There near the stage, my family stands radiant. My father in his bespoke charcoal suit, silver hair immaculate. My mother in emerald silk, poised and regal. And Aiden, my little brother, now a man handsome in his black tuxedo, his hand entwined with Emma's. Her hair glimmers gold under the lights as she smiles up at him, unaware that in that smile lies a blade cutting my heart open. I remember when I told my father I was enlisting. His eyes hardened, his lips curled in disdain. "You're throwing your life away," he said. "The military is for those who have nothing better to do." Aiden had laughed softly behind him. "If you want to play hero, go ahead," he'd said. That laugh haunted me in every midnight coding session, every dawn run with weighted packs on my back, every mission briefing in underground war rooms. The wedding ends late into the night, but I leave before the last dance begins. As I step outside, the warm laughter and jazz music fade behind me, replaced by the chill of midnight air. I loosen my tie, inhaling deeply, letting the cold slice through my chest, like a blade of clarity. A taxi takes me back to my parents' estate. The gates stand tall and silent under moonlight, wrought iron curling into elaborate symbols of wealth and permanence. I walk through the marble foyer, past silent portraits of my ancestors, past the grand piano I once practiced on as a boy. Clara, the housekeeper, greets me with a tired smile. "Welcome home, Ethan," she whispers. I nod, but I don't answer. This place has never been my home. I climb the wide staircase, each step echoing like the march of a soldier in an empty barracks. In my old bedroom, the walls are white and cold. There is no trace of me here. No medals, no certificates. Only a childhood photograph tucked in a dusty corner, me at 10, with my father's arm around my shoulders. He used to say, "Integrity is everything, son. Do what's right even if it costs you everything." But now it seems I'm the only one who remembered his words. At dawn, I wake before the sun rises. I pull on black tactical joggers and a thermal shirt. As I run laps around the silent garden, the rhythmic pounding of my feet against wet grass grounds me. With each breath, I let go of yesterday's pain, replacing it with resolve. The Ethan Caldwell, who walked out of that wedding feeling like a ghost, is gone. In his place is the soldier, the strategist, the man who built an unbreakable fortress around his mind. After my run, I shower quickly and dress in uniform. The deep blue of my lieutenant colonel jacket glints under the pale light. I smooth down the crisp lapels, adjusting my insignia with practiced precision. My reflection stares back at me, steel eyes, straight posture, the faint shadow of sleepless nights beneath them. But my gaze holds no softness now, only purpose. Today is the day of the Project Helios meeting. As my military driver takes me to Nixora Dynamics headquarters, I watch the city rush by cold towers of glass and metal, people moving like data streams across concrete circuits. I tap my fingers against my knee, mentally reviewing every line of the Helios proposal, every hidden cost, every concealed vulnerability. This is not just a contract. It is a gate to national security, and I am its guard. When I arrive, an assistant in a black pencil skirt greets me, eyes wide at the uniform. "Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell, please follow me," she says, voice trembling. Her heels click rapidly on the marble as she leads me to the executive boardroom on the top floor. I step inside. The room falls silent. Floor-to-ceiling windows flood the table with pale morning light. Executives in tailored suits sit in hushed rows, eyes darting from my ribbons to my face and back again. At the far end, my father sits in his charcoal suit, silver hair, immaculate brows knitted in surprise. Beside him, Aiden flips anxiously through his iPad, refusing to meet my gaze. Robert Callahan, the chairman, clears his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice calm and resonant. "We are honored to have with us Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell, Director of Cybersecurity Integration and Defense Relations at U.S. Army Cyber Command. He holds final authority on the approval of Project Helios." My father's eyes widen slightly. Aiden freezes, his stylus slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the table. I remain standing silent, letting their shock settle. The power is not in my rank. The power is in silence, in making them realize who I have become without ever having to say it out loud. Finally, I speak. My voice is low, precise, and cold as the steel edge of a combat knife. "Let's begin." I sit at the head of the table. My gaze sweeps across charts and financial sheets. I point to a line item, 47 million USD allocated to the Singapore subsidiary. No substantiated research output in the last 2 years. Explain. Aiden's mouth opens, then closes. His eyes flick to my father, seeking rescue. None comes. The executives shift uncomfortably in their seats, the tension crackling through the room like static. "It's auxiliary research," Aiden manages to say, his voice small in the cavernous boardroom. "Auxiliary research that does not exist," I say softly, almost kindly. "National security does not tolerate fiction." Silence. My father clears his throat. "Ethan, Lieutenant Colonel, we can review these figures and provide clarity." I look at him. My father. The man who once told me my life was a waste. Now he can't even look me in the eye without flinching at the insignia on my chest. "I expect full justification within 48 hours, I say evenly. "Otherwise, this contract fails. National security is not a negotiation." I stare at the encrypted email glowing on my laptop screen. The Cyber Command seal pulses in the corner, its crimson insignia like fresh blood. My fingers tighten around the edge of the desk as I read line by line. The report is clear. There has been a leak. Classified algorithms from Project Helios now surfacing on international black market channels. If they fall into hostile hands, national security will fracture overnight. My pulse pounds in my ears as I read the source metadata. An internal breach from Nixora Dynamics. The report lists names involved in transaction chains masked under corporate shells and offshore accounts. But one name pierces through the noise, searing into my mind, the brand name Aiden Caldwell. I sit back the chair, creaking softly under my weight. Outside my window, dawn is breaking in pale streaks across the silent city. But in this room, darkness swallows me whole. For years, I told myself I would do anything to protect him. That no matter how far we drifted, he was still my little brother. The boy with skinned knees chasing me through autumn leaves. But now his ambition has crossed a line no blood can justify. My hands tremble slightly as I close the file. The seal of Cyber Command stares back at me, a silent reminder of who I am. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell, Defender of national security, keeper of shadows, soldier first, brother second. I exhale, tasting iron at the back of my throat. If I expose him, Aiden will be destroyed. Stripped of power, tried for treason, imprisoned for life. If I stay silent, my country will bleed data to enemies waiting in the dark. I stand looking at my reflection in the window, a tall figure cloaked in blue dawn eyes, cold and unblinking. There is no choice, only duty. And tonight I will become what my father always feared most, a man willing to sacrifice family for what is right. My father used to sit at the head of the dining table every night, his posture straight as if he were carved from granite. His dark eyes scanned the room with the quiet dominance of a man who owned everything he saw, except when they landed on me. Then, for a fleeting moment, there was softness, a flicker of something human. I lived for those moments like a dying man craving drops of water. He would sip his scotch, place it carefully back onto the coaster and say, "Integrity is everything, Ethan. Even if the world turns its back on you, you must do what is right." I believed him. Every word sank deep into my bones, shaping the boy I was into the man I thought he wanted. So when I told him I had been accepted into West Point, I thought his chest would lift with quiet pride, that I would see that rare flicker of warmth in his eyes, that subtle nod he gave powerful men when they exceeded his expectations. I imagined him saying, "Good job, son." Instead, he stared at me like I had confessed to a murder. "West Point," he said slowly, voice low and flat. "The Army," I nodded, feeling my throat tighten with hope. "Yes, sir. I want to serve. I want to make you proud." He set down his glass with a thud that made my chest flinch. Leaning back in his leather chair, he studied me in silence, his gaze heavy as iron shackles. Then he let out a small, humorless laugh. The sound sliced through me. Proud, he repeated, shaking his head. "You want to waste your mind polishing boots in some freezing barracks? You could be in a corner office overlooking the entire city. You could lead empires, and you choose this." I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him about duty, about purpose, about why standing for something mattered more to me than chasing profit margins. But no words came out. My throat burned with shame I couldn't name. Across the table, my younger brother Aiden, still a teenager, then smirked without looking up from his phone. "Let him go, Dad," Aiden said, thumbs moving rapidly across his screen. "If he wants to play hero, let him." The room went silent again, except for the tick of the grandfather clock echoing off marble floors. My mother shifted in her seat, but said nothing, staring at her wine glass like it contained an escape hatch. No one met my eyes. I felt my vision blur as the truth settled cold in my stomach. I was utterly alone at this table. That night, I lay awake staring into the dark ceiling of my childhood room, listening to the quiet hum of central heating and the distant sound of Aiden's music pounding through his walls. I replayed my father's words until they turned into blades, slicing away every remaining warmth in my chest. "You could lead empires, and you choose this." I thought about integrity, about doing what's right even if the world turns away. But what do you do when the world that turns away is your own father? Later that week, there was a meeting, an emergency board dinner in the private lounge of his skyscraper, after news broke about a pending lawsuit against the company. The partners were gathered around the smoked glass table, suits dark and expensive, voices low with forced calm. My father sat at the head as always, eyes flicking from one man to the next, deciding who would keep their seat and who would lose it. But when his gaze landed on me, seated at the edge as his eldest son, the flicker of softness I once lived for was gone. Only calculation remained. Cold, detached. I watched him raise his hand slightly, silencing the CFO mid-sentence. "Ethan," he said, his voice echoing across the silent room. "Since you're so determined to waste your life on honor and moral purpose, tell me, what would West Point teach you to do in this situation?" Every eye turned to me, sharp with curiosity and hidden disdain. I swallowed the burn in my throat, sat up straighter, and spoke without trembling. "West Point teaches that you protect the people under your command, even if it costs you everything." For a moment, no one breathed. My father's eyes narrowed, flickering with something almost like anger or regret. He nodded once, curt and final, then turned away. "Fire the legal team," he ordered the COO. "Bring in outside counsel. We don't sacrifice the company for loyalty. We protect the name." The meeting continued around me, voices rising and falling like the ocean. But in that moment, I realized he would never be proud of me. Not because I wasn't enough, but because everything I was threatened the kingdom he built. That night before dawn, I packed my bags, folded each shirt with military precision, lined up my boots, smoothed out my acceptance letter from West Point, and slipped it into my folder. I walked downstairs past the oil portraits of ancestors who built fortunes on steel and blood, past the family crest engraved into marble above the fireplace, and stepped out into the cold morning alone. That was the day I understood I would spend the rest of my life chasing a pride that would never come. And it wasn't until years later, standing in front of Margaret Bennett with her poisoned glass and perfect pearls, that I realized I didn't need it anymore. Because true power isn't their approval. It's the quiet certainty of living by your own code, even when no one claps for you. I still remember my first morning at West Point. The air smelled of frost and steel. My breath came out in pale white clouds. As I stood in formation at dawn, boots polished to a mirror shine my spine, burning from the weight of my rucksack. Around me, dozens of cadets trembled in the cold, their eyes flickering with fear, hope, exhaustion. I felt none of it, only emptiness. Only the echo of my father's words pounding against the inside of my skull. "You're wasting your mind polishing boots in a barracks." For weeks I ran until my legs gave out beneath me, did push-ups, until my arms refused to lift my own body off the icy concrete. I memorized codes, tactical manuals, and regimental histories under flickering dorm lights at 3 a.m. while frost rimmed the windows and the world outside slept. Every failure tasted like acid. Every success felt hollow because I knew none of it mattered to him. He would never care. Years passed. West Point stripped me down and rebuilt me into something sharper than bone, colder than iron. I graduated top of my class. As I walked across that stage in my dress, blues, people clapped, and instructors squeezed my shoulder with pride. But inside was a vast silence. My father wasn't there. He never came. Not to my commissioning ceremony, not to my awards banquet, not to the day I pinned my major's bars for the first time. The seat I reserved for him stayed empty every time. So I buried myself in work. Cybersecurity became my war front. Lines of code became my bullets. Enemy threats became my targets. Nights blurred into dawns as I crouched in server rooms colder than any battlefield fingers, flying over keyboards while alarms screamed red and white across plasma screens. Sleep became an indulgence I couldn't afford. Fear turned into fuel. Loneliness turned into armor. They called me a genius. The Pentagon assigned me to Ghost Grid, an elite cyber operations unit that existed only in whispers and black budgets. We neutralized digital attacks before the world even knew they existed. Hostile states, rogue corporations, anarchist collectives, their threats disappeared into silence under our watch. But every success left a stain behind. On my eyes ringed black from sleepless nights. On my shoulders hunched from endless hours bent over glowing screens. On my mind, carved with the names of systems I couldn't patch in time, faces of civilians whose lives flickered out in data streams because we were seconds too late. The cost of playing God in cyberspace is invisible, but it's real. It eats at you like rust under armor. At 33, I stood before Congress explaining Sentinel Fire, the largest cyber defense operation in U.S. history. I wore my dress blues ribbons lined across my chest. Senators called me the future of modern warfare. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted my name, demanding sound bites for their networks. But when I checked my phone after the hearing, there was no message from my father, no email from home, only silence. Vast, cold. At 36, NATO awarded me the Strategic Defense Medal. I stood on stage in Brussels accepting it from a 4-star general while dignitaries in tailored suits applauded. That night, I sent a photo to my mother. She never replied. People call it Vinh Quang glory. But glory tastes like blood and metal. It weighs heavy in your chest when you stand alone in your apartment at 2 a.m., staring at the blinking cursor of classified code, knowing no one will ever understand what you sacrificed for those bars on your shoulder. I told myself I didn't care, that this path was mine alone to walk, that I didn't need them, didn't need him. But deep down in the part of me that still remembers chasing my father's shadow across the front lawn, as a boy, I knew the truth. I wanted him to see me, to see the soldier I had become. The man forged from steel and discipline and silent victories. Instead, all he ever saw was the boy who walked away from the throne he built, the son who chose honor over empire, the soldier who chose integrity over inheritance. And maybe in his eyes, that would always be unforgivable. The next morning, I wake before dawn. Habit, not intention. Years of reveille calls, of midnight alarms vibrating against my ribs have carved this rhythm into my bones. Even here, even in this house of marble and chandeliers, my body remains a soldier's body. Always ready, always waiting. I shower in silence. The hot water scalds my skin, but does nothing to wash away the heaviness pressing down on my chest. I dress in a black sweater and dark trousers, civilian clothes that feel foreign against skin used to uniforms. As I walk down the grand staircase, the cold marble seeps through my thin socks, chilling me to the bone. This house has always been cold. The dining room is filled with pale morning light filtering through towering windows. My father sits at the head of the table, as immovable as the stone columns outside. Charles Caldwell, CEO, kingmaker, empire builder. His silver hair is combed back with ruthless precision. Reading glasses rest low on his nose as he scans the Wall Street Journal. He doesn't look up when I enter. My mother Olivia stands at the kitchen counter, arranging fresh berries onto a porcelain platter. Her silk robe whispers with each movement. She turns when she sees me, and a smile blooms across her face, small and sad and proud all at once. "Good morning, Ethan," she says softly, her voice carrying warmth into the frozen room. "Sit. I'll make you some coffee." I nod, sliding into a chair across from my father. The table between us feels wider than the sea I crossed on deployment. I study him. The lines on his face are deeper since I left, but his eyes remain sharp, cold, unyielding. Built for conquest, not compassion. Finally, he lowers the paper. His gaze sweeps over my plain sweater, pausing briefly at the West Point ring glinting on my finger, before flicking up to my eyes. There is no flicker of recognition, only assessment, measurement, judgment. So he says, his voice calm but carrying an undertone sharper than any blade. "You're still in the military. It isn't a question. It's a condemnation." Yes, I reply, my voice quiet but unbending. Still there. He exhales through his nose, folding the paper with crisp precision and setting it beside his plate. My mother places a steaming mug of coffee in front of me, her hands trembling ever so slightly. The rich, bitter scent curls into the cold air. My father leans back, crossing his arms over his chest. "Tell me, Ethan," he begins, each word slow and deliberate. "What exactly are you doing with your life?" Aiden is leading our Asia expansion this quarter. Closed a deal worth $500 million last week. His eyes narrow. "And you're still playing soldier." I wrap my hands around the warm ceramic, feeling the heat seep into my skin, grounding me. I force my voice to remain steady. "I like my work," I say simply. He scoffs under his breath, shaking his head with a pitying smirk. "Work, that's not work, son. That's play. Discipline without vision is wasted energy. One day you'll understand what real responsibility looks like. When you're ready, let me know. I can still find you a place at Nixora Dynamics. Not anything executive, of course, but something to get you started. Something to get you started." The words sink into my chest like cold lead, heavy and unmoving. I clench my jaw to keep from shaking with the anger rising up my throat. Anger never works with him. Only silence. Only obedience. Across the table, my mother hovers her gaze, flicking between us, eyes glassy with silent pleading. "Charles, enough," she whispers, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Ethan has his own path. He brushes her hand away without looking at her, his gaze locked on mine. "You don't understand, Olivia. He's wasting his life. He's not like Aiden." Those words cut through me with a quiet, lethal precision. No blood, just pain, deep and invisible. I place the coffee cup back on its saucer with deliberate care and stand. My chair scrapes against the marble floor, the harsh screech echoing through the silent dining room like a gunshot. "I'm full," I say softly, my voice carrying the edge of finality. "Thank you for breakfast, Mom." As I turn to leave, I feel his eyes boring into my back, dissecting me, branding me with the label he has always believed: true disappointment. I keep my head high, my shoulders straight, each step measured and silent. The way I've been trained to walk under fire. But as I reach the doorway, I blink hard, swallowing the burn rising in my eyes. Because no matter how many medals they pin on my chest, no matter how many missions I lead in darkness, no matter how many enemies I defeat in silence at the end of it all, I am still just a son standing in front of his father, silently begging to be seen. And knowing with a hollow certainty that I never will be. That afternoon, I drive downtown to see Aiden. Part of me doesn't know why I bother. Maybe it's habit. Muscle memory from childhood when I used to look out for him. Carry his backpack when he cried that it was too heavy. Cover his lies so our father wouldn't scold him at dinner. Old habits die hardest. His office is on the 40th floor of a glass skyscraper that pierces the winter sky, reflecting the entire city in harsh noon light. As I ride the elevator up, watching my reflection warp and ripple in the mirrored walls, the higher I go, the heavier my chest feels. When the doors slide open, I step out into hushed marble silence. His secretary greets me with a bright, empty smile and gestures to the corner office. I don't knock. I just walk in. Aiden sits behind an enormous black oak desk, head bent over twin glowing screens filled with jagged financial graphs. The city sprawls endlessly behind him, through floor-to-ceiling windows, a silent kingdom at his feet. He looks up surprised, and for a moment, just a fleeting heartbeat, I see my little brother again. The boy who used to beg me to stay in his room during thunderstorms, whispering stories until he fell asleep. the boy who would hide under my blankets after nightmares. Then it's gone. His gaze sharpens, his mouth curves into his corporate half-smile. He stands adjusting the cuffs of his tailored charcoal suit with effortless confidence. "Ethan," he says, his voice warm but hollow. "Didn't expect you. What brings you here?" I sit down across from him without invitation. Leaning back in the leather chair, feeling its softness swallow my broad shoulders. "Just wanted to congratulate you," I say. My voice quiet. The wedding was beautiful. He grins, sinking into his chair. "Thanks. Emma planned most of it. Cost a fortune, but worth it." He pauses, scanning me, my black sweater, the old titanium watch on my wrist, my silent posture. His lips twitch into that same condescending smile he's worn since he was 16. "So still in the military?" he asks, his tone casual, dismissive. "Yes," I reply evenly. He chuckles softly, shaking his head like he's amused by an old family joke. "You're one of a kind, Ethan. Dad's right, you know. You could be sitting here managing billion-dollar deals, running mergers, building something real. Instead, you're out there doing what? Hiding in bunkers, coding viruses and firewalls for people who will never know your name." I stare at him for a long moment, taking in the pristine suit, the Rolex that gleams when he shifts under the lights, the subtle scent of vetiver cologne that smells like success and old money. I see him for what he is, not the boy I protected, but a man carved in our father's image, polished, strategic, empty. I like my work. I say, my voice flat, controlled, giving him nothing. He leans forward, folding his manicured hands on the glossy desk. "Come on, Ethan. Don't do this to yourself. The world runs on money and power. The military doesn't give you either. If you want, I can talk to Dad. Get you a position here. Nothing too fancy at first, but you're smart. You'll climb fast." His words are meant to be kind. That's what cuts deepest. The pity in them burns hotter than any insult. I smile faintly, the kind of smile snipers make before they pull the trigger. "Thanks. But I'm fine." He shrugs, leaning back in his chair, already dismissing me. "Suit yourself." I stand, buttoning my coat, movements smooth and silent like a soldier leaving a cleared room. As I turn to leave, I glance at him one last time. My brother, the boy I carried on my back when he fell off his bike. The boy who once cried when I left for West Point. The boy who now looks at me like a failed investment. "Congratulations again," I say softly. "I hope you find everything you're looking for." He nods absently, eyes drifting back to his glowing graphs, to the kingdom of numbers and silent conquests he's built atop a throne of inherited power. I walk out down the long, polished hallway, my boots echoing against marble. The elevator carries me back down to the street, each floor falling away like another memory stripped from bone. My chest feels tight, not with anger. Anger is fleeting. This is deeper, a sadness that sits heavy in my lungs. Or maybe just acceptance. The quiet truth I've always known: my family no longer sees me. And maybe they never did. But as I step into the cold afternoon wind, the skyscraper rising behind me like a blade piercing the sky, I straighten my shoulders and inhale deeply. Because in 7 days at that Project Helios meeting, they will see me. All of me. And the soldier they called useless will become the one man holding their fate in his silent, steady hands. Because true power isn't inherited. It's forged. And mine has always been forged in silence. That evening, my parents host a dinner party at the estate. A gathering of people who measure worth by portfolio size, who gauge success by the last names engraved on brass office plaques and the private jet tail numbers whispered about in city clubs. I plan to slip upstairs after my evening run, maybe review Project Helios briefs in silence. But as I enter the marble foyer, hair damp with sweat, my mother's voice cuts through the hush of luxury. "Ethan, come in," meet everyone, she calls out, her tone light and cheerful, floating effortlessly through the chandelier glow oblivious to the steel beneath it. I step into the vast living room, glowing under crystal lights refracted across decanters of bourbon and Pinot Noir. Men in tailored suits recline into Italian leather, their watches gleaming like medals. Women in muted silks cross their legs elegantly, diamonds glittering at their throats. Their laughter is soft, cultivated, the practiced amusement of people who have never needed to raise their voices to be heard. My father stands near the fireplace, swirling dark amber liquid in a cut crystal glass. When he sees me, his expression does not change. He raises his glass slightly, a gesture of bored acknowledgement, as if greeting a passing waiter. Everyone, he says, with that quiet, effortless authority, "This is Ethan, my eldest son. He's serving in the military." A silence follows, subtle but sharp enough to slice skin. A man with a gleaming bald head and diamond cufflinks lets out a short laugh, as if thinking it's a joke that everyone will find amusing. When no one joins him, he clears his throat cheeks, blotching pink. "The military." "Really?" he asks, blinking rapidly. "You didn't want to work with your father at Nixora. It's dominating the market these days." I smile politely, feeling the edges of my mouth tighten, muscles locking in place. "I like my work," I say softly, each syllable clipped, controlled. Across the room, a woman with pearl earrings and crimson lipstick leans forward slightly, her voice dripping pity that cuts deeper than open scorn. "Oh, what a pity. With Caldwell genes, you should be a billionaire by now." My father chuckles lightly, taking a sip of his drink, before adding almost as an afterthought, "Exactly. But Ethan here, he wants to be a lowly soldier." I don't know what he's thinking. The room erupts in polite laughter. Controlled, restrained, deadly. Each note lands like a hammer on a porcelain wall inside my chest. Part of me wants to scream, to tear through the designer seams of this room, to shout the truth that pulses beneath my skin like silent lightning. That I am Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell. That I command Ghost Grid, the cyber division that erases threats before their wealth even senses danger. That my decisions hold the power to collapse their billion-dollar empires before dawn. That the only reason their investments remain secure is because men like me keep them invisible and intact. But I don't. Instead, I smile politely. I nod, my posture easy, non-threatening, the way they prefer me. I excuse myself softly, each word coated in ice. Upstairs in my childhood room, I close the door behind me. The laughter continues below, muffled through thick carpets and Italian marble floors. I sit on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the window, my silhouette merging with the cold blackness outside. I see myself as they do, shadowed, diminished, disposable. I take off my watch, placing it neatly on the bedside table. Then I lie back, folding my arms behind my head, staring at the carved plaster ceiling with its gilded medallion. They call me the lowly soldier, the failure son, the man who chose boots and guns over power and gold. And perhaps to them, that is who I will always be. But in 7 days, they will sit in that boardroom, eyes wide, words frozen in their throats, as Project Helios unfolds before them. As the world they believe they own bends and reshapes under the silent will of the soldier they dismissed. And I will not need to raise my voice. I will not need to boast. I will simply stand there in quiet certainty. Because true power does not scream. True power stands silent and watches the world bend to its will. 1 week later, I walk into Nixora Dynamics headquarters dressed in my full military uniform. The deep navy fabric cuts severe lines across my shoulders, silver insignia gleaming under fluorescent lights that hum with corporate sterility. Each step echoes across polished marble like the measured toll of a funeral bell. At the lobby desk, the assistant glances up, her trained corporate smile freezing mid-formation. Her eyes flick from the stars and bars on my chest to the nameplate above my heart. And something flickers across her gaze, fear, confusion, respect, before she catches herself. "Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell," she says softly, almost reverently. "The boardroom is ready for you." I nod, once silent. Words are unnecessary. I follow her down the glass corridor, each pane reflecting my silhouette, tall, rigid, uniformed. A soldier walking through enemy territory. As I pass, employees pause mid-conversation, eyes tracking me with hushed caution. They don't see a son coming home. They don't see a brother. They see authority cloaked in shadows and steel, a man who carries decisions that bend worlds. When the boardroom doors open, silence swallows the room whole. The conference table stretches before me like a runway to judgment. Floor-to-ceiling windows pour pale morning light onto polished ebony, illuminating rows of executives in bespoke suits and silk blouses. At the far end sits Robert Callahan, chairman of Nixora Dynamics, his gray hair immaculately combed, posture regal. Beside him, directors shift in their seats, eyes flicking to me, processing rank medals insignia. My father sits halfway down the table. Charles Caldwell. His suit is dark chocolate, precision silver gleaming against tan skin. He taps an old pen lightly against the leather floor, his gaze fixed on some figure in his notes, unaware of the storm landing at his feet. Aiden is next to him. My brother. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, hair styled to perfection, scrolling absently through his iPad, completely at ease, arrogance radiating off him like heat from asphalt. Callahan rises. His deep baritone cuts cleanly through the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, voice calm, resonant, commanding immediate attention. "Thank you for joining us today to finalize Project Helios, a contract that will define the future of both national security and corporate defense technologies. It is my honor to introduce the Department of Defense's lead on this operation. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell, Director of Cyber Strategy Integration and Defense Relations at U.S. Army Cyber Command." For a moment, the world stops. The words hang suspended in the air, brittle as glass. My father's pen stops tapping. Slowly, he looks up. His eyes, always sharp and unyielding, widen in disbelief. Confusion flashes there, quickly smothered by something darker, fear. Number Charles Caldwell does not fear. But in this moment, he does not understand. And that terrifies him more. I turn my gaze to Aiden. His stylus stills mid-scroll. His eyes rise to mine, pupils dilating as realization crashes into him like a bullet. The stylus slips from his fingers, clattering onto the table with a sharp, metallic note that seems to echo forever in the silent room. For the first time in my life, I see it: fear. Raw, unmasked fear in his perfect corporate eyes. I walk forward, each step measured, silent, unhurried, like a predator approaching its prey. I place my classified dossier on the glass table with the same precision I used placing breaching charges in combat training, deliberate, final. I sit down across from them. My movements are precise, disciplined. Years of war rooms and high-level briefings have honed me into a weapon of silent command. I do not greet them. I do not smile. I fold my hands neatly, feeling the cool press of insignia against my chest, the weight of duty, the comfort of knowing exactly who I am. The boardroom holds its breath. Even the city beyond the windows seems to still skyscrapers looming under a white sky awaiting my judgment. My father's eyes search mine. I can almost hear his thoughts screaming, "My son is Helios's final authority. The lowly soldier is the man holding our fate in his hands." Aiden swallows hard. His Adam's apple bobs visibly. The arrogance bleeds out of his posture, leaving behind only a hollow shell of uncertainty. He shifts in his seat, glancing nervously at our father, silently begging for rescue he knows will not come. I let the silence stretch, wrapping around the room like a tightening noose. Power does not shout. Power does not boast. Power simply is silent, inevitable, absolute. Finally, I speak. My voice is low, calm, each syllable carved from ice and honed by years spent commanding men whose lives depended on my words. Let's begin. The meeting begins. I flip open my dossier, the thick pages rustling softly in the silent boardroom. Outside, dawn is just breaking over the skyline, casting pale gold across the floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, the air hangs heavy, dense with fear, with secrets, with the silent understanding that something irreversible is about to happen. My eyes scan the documents before me, though I've memorized every line. Each number is a loaded bullet. Each omission a wound waiting to be exposed. I look up, sweeping my gaze across the long mahogany table. No one meets my eyes. Not the directors shifting uneasily in their leather seats. Not the engineers scribbling frantic notes to look busy. Not even Robert Callahan, Project Helios Chief Operations Officer, who sits stiff-backed with his hands folded tightly together, knuckles pale. Finally, my gaze settles on Aiden. He fidgets under my stare, tapping his stylus against the table rhythmically, trying to mask his discomfort with casual arrogance. But his shoulders are rigid, his jaw clenched. The faint sheen of sweat at his temples betrays him. He knows what's coming. I speak, my voice quiet, but carrying that edge of command that turns air to ice. Page 37. Line item allocation to Nixora Dynamics Singapore subsidiary, 47 million USD. I pause, letting the number settle in the room like a slab of concrete dropped into still water. Across the table, one of the finance directors swallows audibly. Another lowers her gaze to her notes, refusing to look up. "What is it for?" I ask, tilting my head slightly, studying Aiden the way I'd study a wounded target on an Overwatch scope. Calm, detached, precise. Aiden shifts in his chair, his eyes darting to the directors beside him, then flicking to our father, who sits at the far end, stone, still, his pen suspended mid-air above his notes. Finally, Aiden looks back at me. His lips part slightly as he tries to find words. "It's auxiliary research," he says, voice trembling, despite his attempt to inject confidence. "Market analysis and algorithm testing for future modules." I watch him carefully. I see the flicker of panic in his pupils, the slight tremor in his hands, the way his foot taps nervously beneath the table. His explanation is hollow. He knows it. So does everyone in this room. "Auxiliary research," I repeat softly, tasting the words as if they're foreign on my tongue. Then I lean back, slowly folding my hands in front of me. The silver West Point insignia ring catches a shard of morning light flashing across the table like a blade. "Do you have documented deliverables from this research?" I ask calmly. Because Cyber Command's audit indicates the Singapore subsidiary has reported 0 active personnel dedicated to Project Helios since Q4 2 years ago. Aiden opens his mouth, closes it again. His throat works as he swallows hard. Silence expands around him, pressing down heavy and suffocating. I watch him drown in it. Every second feels like an hour, his facade cracking under the weight of exposure. Desperation bleeds into his eyes as he turns to our father. Charles Caldwell sits unmoving, jaw clenched so tight, a vein pulses at his temple. His eyes remain locked on the table in front of him, refusing to meet mine. But in the hard lines of his face, I see it shame, disbelief, and something darker, the realization that his golden sun is failing, that his empire is fracturing from within. Finally, I speak again. My voice is low, cold, lethal. National security, I say each word carved from steel, does not tolerate ambiguity. If this 47 million is unjustified, the entire contract fails. And if this is an attempt to divert funds, understand this. I do not care who you are to me. Silence. Absolute and crushing. Even the faint hum of the city beyond the glass feels muted under the weight of those words. Aiden stares at me. His face has gone pale, his lips trembling with words he can no longer form. His stylus rolls from his fingers and clatters onto the table, the sound ringing loud in the frozen room. The directors shift uncomfortably. One coughs lightly to break the tension, but no one dares speak. Robert Callahan exhales shakily, his eyes darting between us like a man watching gods wage war. I close the dossier softly, the sound crisp and final like the snick of a rifle bolt. My eyes remain locked on Aiden. This is not personal, I say calmly, my voice steady and unyielding. This is duty. And in that moment, I see it in his eyes, not just fear, not just the helpless panic of a man caught in his own trap, but betrayal, a raw, wounded betrayal. As if he's realizing perhaps for the first time that to me country will always come before blood. That duty will always outrank brotherhood. He sees it now. The soldier they dismissed as useless. The son they pitied as a failure. The man they thought too weak to hold real power, standing silent, unbending, holding their fate in his steady, gloved hands. After the meeting, I gather my dossier and stand. The directors avoid my eyes, shuffling papers, mumbling polite farewells, as if I've become something they can't quite look at directly. Callahan clasps my shoulder firmly, his grip strong, his gaze brimming with unspoken respect. "Good work, Colonel," he murmurs, voice low enough that only I hear. "We'll be in touch." I nod once, silent, before stepping out into the marble corridor. The glass walls reflect my silhouette back at me, the dark uniform, the ribbons across my chest, the silver oak leaves gleaming on my collar. My boots echo with each step, deliberate, grounded, unbreakable. "Ethan." I stop. Behind me, my father's voice, deep, controlled, but trembling at the edges, like a dam ready to crack. I turn slowly. Charles Caldwell stands there, flanked by Aiden and my mother. They look so perfectly arranged, like a family portrait painted in muted oils. But their eyes betray the fractures running beneath the surface. My father clears his throat, his hands flexing as if searching for something to hold on to. For the first time in my life, he looks small, stripped of his empire's armor. Just a man standing under the fluorescent glare of truths he can no longer control. Why didn't you tell us?" he finally manages, gesturing vaguely at my uniform, the medals glinting across my chest, the insignia on my collar. His voice cracks. "All these years, Lieutenant Colonel Ghost Grid Helios. You're not just a soldier." I hold his gaze. The man who once taught me about integrity over steak dinners, who spoke of honor while crushing rivals underfoot. The man whose approval I spent a lifetime trying to earn. "I did tell you," I say softly, my voice even but edged with an ache I can't hide. "I sent invitations to my graduation, to my promotion ceremonies, to the NATO medal presentation. I sent photos, emails, messages. My mother's eyes glisten with tears. Her hands tremble as she covers her mouth, sobbing quietly. Willie, I thought you were just doing office work in the army. I didn't know it was this. I didn't understand. Her voice breaks on the last word. My chest tightens painfully. For a moment, the soldier in me falters, and all I see is her, the woman who brushed my hair with gentle fingers before Sunday church, who smelled of lavender and rain. Beside her, Aiden stands silent. His eyes are bloodshot, his shoulders slumped forward in defeat. The polished executive is gone. In his place is a boy stripped of his illusions, trembling under truths he can't undo. He looks at me, tears brimming. Ethan. His voice is small, cracked, and raw. I'm sorry. I thought you weren't good enough. I mocked you. I was wrong. You deserve respect. More than any of us. I study him. My little brother. The boy who clung to my leg when he was scared of thunder. The boy I carried on my shoulders so he could see fireworks above the crowd. The boy who now stands before me, broken under the weight of his own shame. Part of me wants to reach out to forgive him instantly, to protect him like I always did. But another part of me is tired. Tired of being the silent shield for people who never asked what it cost me to hold. My father steps forward. His eyes are red-rimmed, his voice hoarse with words too long buried. I thought you needed me to guide you, that you were wasting your life. I didn't see. His throat tightens, and for the first time in decades, his voice cracks with something like grief. I didn't see you. I'm proud of you, Ethan. More than I can ever say. The words hit me like a gunshot to the chest. All the years I spent chasing those syllables, all the nights I bled sweat and tears just to hear them once. Now they're here and they taste of ashes. Too late. Too hollow. I nod slowly, feeling something break and something mend inside me at the same time. A quiet acceptance of a truth I've carried since I was 12. I didn't choose this to reject you, I say quietly, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. I chose it because it was right. My father nods, his shoulders trembling. My mother sobs softly into her hands. Aiden wipes his face roughly, his breath ragged with guilt and sorrow. For a moment, we stand there, a fractured family stitched together by truths too heavy to carry alone. Silence blooms around us, thick with all the words that will never be spoken. Then I turn. Adjusting my uniform shoulders, squared chin, lifted boots planted firm on marble. Because I am Ethan Caldwell, Lieutenant Colonel, Ghost Grid founder, Cyber Command strategist. And though I was born their son, I became my own man in the dark, forged in shadows, sharpened by purpose, tempered by truths no empire could break. A man who no longer lives to be seen. A man who stands silent and lets the world bend to his will. 2 days later, I sit alone in a small cafe tucked away on an old suburban street. The air smells of roasted beans, old wood, and something like nostalgia. The wooden tables are scratched by time and countless conversations. The windows fog with morning chill, softening the view of bare trees outside. This place hasn't changed since we were kids. I sit at our old corner table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee. The seat across from me is empty. For now. I stare out the window, watching people hurry down cracked sidewalks, clutching briefcases and paper cups, chasing deadlines that will mean nothing when their hearts stop beating. Their shadows blur against frost-dusted concrete, fleeting and silent. The bell above the cafe door jingles. I don't need to look up to know it's him. Aiden walks in, suit slightly rumpled, dark circles bruising the delicate skin under his eyes. He scans the room until his gaze lands on me. Our eyes lock, and for a moment, neither of us moves. The years between us stretch and contract in that silence. Then he walks over, sliding into the seat across from me. The leather creaks softly under his weight. "Hey," he says, his voice quiet, stripped of the effortless arrogance it once carried like second skin. "Hey," I reply. For a while, we sit in silence. The only sounds are the low hum of the espresso machine, the hiss of milk steaming, the clatter of ceramic cups against saucers. Outside, a dog barks and a truck rumbles by, shaking frost from skeletal branches. Finally, he speaks. His voice trembles just enough to splinter something in me I didn't know was still breakable. "I've spent the last 2 days going through everything he says. The Singapore Fund, the vulnerabilities you flagged. You were right. I let my ambition blind me. I'm fixing it. All of it." I nod, staring into my coffee, watching the dark surface ripple with my shallow breaths. My reflection wavers, their tired eyes, the hint of silver at my temples lines, carved deep by sleepless nights and hard truths. "Good," I say softly. "You're smart, Aiden. Smarter than me in many ways. Don't waste that." He swallows, hard eyes shining with tears. He fights to keep contained. "I'm sorry, Ethan," he whispers, voice cracking on my name. "All these years I thought you were weak for choosing the army, that you were hiding from real life. But now I see you were braver than any of us." I look at him, really look. My little brother. The boy who used to chase me barefoot across the dewy lawn at dawn. Who cried for hours when his goldfish floated belly up in its bowl. Who laughed along with our father when I came home bruised from training, thinking it made him stronger to stand on the winning side. And now the man who sits before me, stripped of his illusions, desperate for forgiveness he doesn't know how to ask for. I reach across the table, placing my hand over his. He flinches at first, then grips my fingers tightly, his palm damp and trembling as if he's drowning. "It's okay," I say. My voice is quiet, but it carries every truth I have left. "I don't need you to be proud of me. I just need you to live right, to be the man Mom believes you are." He nods quickly, blinking back tears. His shoulders shake with silent sobs he refuses to let escape in this public place where two men sit as brothers again for the first time in years. For a while longer, we drink our coffee in quiet conversation, voices low, talking about small things, stocks, the weather, old neighbors we thought had moved away. For a fleeting moment, we are just Ethan and Aiden again. No uniforms, no suits, no billion-dollar contracts, no secrets heavy as lead. As we stand to leave, Aiden pulls me into a hug. His grip is tight, desperate, heavy with all the words he cannot say. His breath is ragged against my shoulder. "I'll do better," he whispers, his voice muffled by my coat. "I promise." "I know," I murmur back, resting my chin lightly on his hair, feeling how fragile and real he is. Outside, the winter sun has begun to rise, washing the cracked sidewalk in quiet gold. Aiden walks toward his parked car, glancing back one last time before disappearing into the waking city. I watch him go, my chest aching with a pain that is not sadness, not quite relief, something deeper. Something like hope. Because forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is choosing to see the flicker of light that still burns within the darkness. And as I turn away from the cafe, the cold morning air biting at my face, the scent of roasted beans lingering on my coat, I realize, maybe that is enough for now. A week later, I return to my apartment near the Pentagon. A modest place tucked between tall concrete buildings and silent government complexes. White walls, a single oak desk scarred with years of elbows leaning in exhaustion. A bookshelf lined with classified files, tactical manuals, after-action reports, and a single framed photo, my ghost grid team, all of us in combat utilities, dirt on our faces, eyes burning with silent purpose. The only family portrait I ever needed. I place my duffel bag on the floor and close the door behind me. The familiar scent of metal paper and old coffee greets me like an old friend. I shrug off my coat, unbutton my uniform jacket, and hang it carefully beside my field jacket on the rack by the door. For a moment, I stand there staring at the insignia glinting under the dim lamplight. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Caldwell, Director of Cyber Strategy Integration and Defense Relations. Soldier, brother, son. A man forged in shadows, carrying truths too heavy for most to hold. I reach into my pocket and pull out a folded piece of paper, the note written in my mother's elegant cursive. The paper is creased where my thumb pressed it tight during the flight. I read it again, the words softening something jagged inside me. Willie, I'm proud of you. Not because of your rank, not because of your medals, but because you are my son. I love you. Mom, I close my eyes, feeling the sting burn behind my eyelids. For so long, I chased their pride like a dying man crawling after water in a desert. Every mission, every deployment, every promotion felt like a mile closer to something I could never reach. But standing here in this silent room, lit by the glow of a city I protect without their knowing, I realize I don't need them to understand me to keep loving them. I walk to the window, pushing aside the blackout curtain. Outside, the city sprawls in a grid of blinking lights and quiet motion. Somewhere out there, enemies move in shadows, plotting chaos their victims will never see coming. Somewhere out there, Aiden sits at his new desk, rebuilding what he nearly destroyed. Somewhere out there, my mother is reading poetry by her window, whispering my name into the dark. And here I stand, alone but not lonely. Because the battlefield taught me one truth no family dinner ever could. Strength is not in being seen. Strength is in standing firm even when no one is watching. I turn away from the window, kneel to unlace my boots and place them neatly by the door. My movements are silent, efficient, the choreography of a life lived in readiness. I change into a gray shirt and joggers, pour myself a glass of water, and sit down at my desk. My laptop hums to life under my fingertips, casting pale blue light onto my tired face. New threat analyses wait in my inbox. New codes to dissect, new invisible wars to fight. I crack my knuckles, feeling the ache of old injuries bloom briefly before fading into focus. I place my fingers on the keys and begin typing, the rhythmic clack of each keystroke echoing softly through the empty apartment. Because tomorrow and every day after, I remain who I chose to be, a soldier who stands in darkness so that others may sleep in light. A son who learned that forgiveness is not surrender. A man who no longer needs to be seen to know his worth. And for the first time in years, as I listen to the quiet rhythm of my own breath surrounded by silence that feels like peace, I realize that is enough. That has always been enough. I remain who I chose to be, a soldier, standing in darkness so others may sleep in light. But as I lean into the glow of my laptop, sipping cold water in my silent apartment, a flashing red subject line appears at the top of my inbox. Project Ghost Grid Breach Urgent. My chest tightens as I click it open, and a single line slices through the calm I fought so hard to build. We've detected an internal leak within Ghost Grid command protocols. Possible mole among top-tier strategists. Your clearance and integrity are under review. Stand by for debrief. My pulse hammers against my ribs. Ghost Grid, the unit I built from nothing. The elite force trusted with secrets no nation dares speak aloud. Now someone inside is betraying us. And worse, I am under suspicion myself. A cold tremor seeps into my bones, sharper than any battlefield dawn. Could it be someone I trained? Someone I called brother? Or am I the one being set up to take the fall? In that moment, one truth burns clear: the real war isn't fought against enemies outside. It's fought against the traitors standing right beside you. If the people who protect you are no longer clean, who will protect you from them? Thank you for staying until the end. Your presence keeps these shadows alive, one silent heartbeat at a time.